But first, the Albanese government is doing what the Morrison government would not. It has put together a plan to bring back the 16 Australian women and 42 children who are part of the Islamic State, but since its collapse have been held in a detention camp in Syria. Now, ASIO has already been on a secret mission there to check how that extraction can be done. The government is telling us to have pity on these people, to consider some or many of the women as victims who were tricked or forced into going to join this brutal caliphate that for a while, until its collapse 3.5 years ago, controlled 11 million people.
We've got about 40 Australian kids living in one of the most dangerous places on earth in a refugee camp. Some of the women, some of the mothers were taken there as little more than children themselves and married off to IS fighters. Some of them tricked, some of them forced to go there.
Yeah, steady on there. Already I'm thinking, this government is giving a spin here. They're minimising the danger. They're playing down the past as well. You know, these poor women, they didn't know. Now, maybe for one or two of those women, you might possibly believe them, provided you first check their claims. Here's one of those Australian women apparently going to now come home.
Did you know you were going into Syria?
Of course not. Who walks into a war zone? I had a whole family. I had a whole thing going on. I was doing uni. I had everything.
Now, I know this is not an easy issue, but hang on here. Let's not swallow this idea that they're just innocents, not so dangerous. Maybe they've learned their lesson when the Islamic State finally did collapse. Because here's a war crimes investigator, the head of an NGO.
In some cases, sure. Trickery, love, whatever, took them into Syria and or Iraq. But in other cases, there may have been a clear criminal intent. This needs to be checked.
And it's right, you know, remember, it was very, very hard to actually get to the Islamic State at the time. It wasn't like, you know, getting off at the wrong bus stop or, you know, you come to the airport, you get off of the plane at the airport, oh, the Islamic State. A train station, oh, I got off a train station too soon. There were actually people trying to stop you from going there. Here in Australia, they were trying to stop you. In Turkey, in Iraq, along the borders of the Islamic State, they're trying to stop you. And another thing to remember, it wasn't like none of the more than 200 Australians who did join the Islamic State can have been in any doubt at all about how barbaric and evil it was. I mean, the Islamic State was actually putting out videos about how cruel it was, videos of the people it was beheading, of the people it was burning alive in cages or roasting alive over an open fire, things that I can't even hint at with pictures here. They also boasted of the hundreds of Yazidi women they kept as sex slaves. And meanwhile, Islamic State terrorists and sympathisers struck around the world, from London to Sydney, spreading fear. And amongst Muslims too, as well. Don't forget that, because they copped the inevitable backlash. We had hundreds of Australians joining the Islamic State Caliphate knowing all this. Videos of these atrocities were actually circulating right here on the fringes of the Islamic community. And for some of the people that went there, this cruelty was exactly what attracted them. So let's have some honesty from the Albanese government about the danger in what it's doing. In fact, some women are not that repentant, it seems. Neil Fergus is the head of Intelligent Risks, is a company which has worked with government departments and agencies on security here and with governments in Britain and the US around the world. He said today one Australian woman in the camps was apparently recently plotting to kidnap Australian officials trying to rescue the women.
There was some credible intelligence that a plot was being hatched to actually lure Australian government officials into that environment with the purpose of either killing them or holding them as hostage. It referred to a family group where the children were entirely innocent and assessed as not being radicalised. But one of the females in that family group was, whether willingly or under pressure, under coercion, suspected of trying to be part of luring a rescue team in.
As for the children, not radicalised, we're told, and I'd really want to believe that, and maybe it's actually true. But how do you know how they'll turn out? They've been in the Islamic State and in these camps, some for their whole lives, with mothers who in many cases shared a radical ideology for at least a while, and these mothers will continue to raise these children. So how many years of work and expense will be needed from our intelligence agencies to monitor them when they come home, to make sure they grow up straight and true? I agree, it's harsh, it's cruel even to leave these children there in those camps with their mothers. But let's not pretend that bringing them back is a doddle. You know, it's okay, innocent people. Let's not pretend that. And there's one other thing to consider. You know, it's an Anglo thing, particularly now with religion dying. Well, if it didn't work, that's embarrassing. Let's learn, move on, junk all that, leave all that embarrassment in the past. But the Islamic State, all right, its caliphate was destroyed in war. That's true, it's collapsed. But the Islamic State itself does live on, with many of its foreign fighters too, gone back home or abroad somewhere. Last week, for instance, the Afghan wing of the Islamic State sent a suicide bomber to this school in Kabul, teaching mainly female students from the Shia faith. The Islamic State is Sunni. These are the students just before the attack. And this is afterwards. Now, it's the least bloody photo I could find, no body parts to distress you. After nearly 40 students were blown to bits, including these two sisters. The Islamic State lives, and we're bringing home some of the people who followed it. And once again, do not get me wrong. This isn't an easy question. You know, it's all one side or the other. Really, we're going to leave the children in that desert camp and their mothers too forever? Really? Now, some Australians will say, yes, you made your bed. Why put the rest of us at risk? Others will say, you know, show mercy, and mercy is a wonderful thing. But whichever way you lean, what we do all deserve is honesty from this government, from a Labor Party that too often, particularly on these sorts of issues, has thought with its heart and not its head. Grand plans, lovely plans, sympathetic plans, passionate, compassionate plans that collapse in tears. Do not fall for easy talk about de-radicalization programs either for the children. Teach them right, you know, it'll be okay. They'll to learn to love this country. I have to have a doubt on that, because this is a country where children are actually taught to loathe, at least our supposed past. You have a look at a school in the ACT, for instance, teaching children a falsehood that was so racist that we stole a generation of Aboriginal children. The students there are meant to feel guilty too. They've made bunting for their playground saying, we stole your land, we stole your families. Sorry that we took your children, sorry we took your land. When that sort of teaching is entrenched in schools, then my faith that we can teach the children returning from Syria to give their love and allegiance to this country, that's not so strong. A lot of Australians are also going to share that fear. So what we want is less spin about innocent mothers and babies, you know, jihadist brides. We need some blunt truths, because get this wrong, people here could get killed.